Welcome to the Code 4 Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and Code 4. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cindy Doyle, author of Hold the Line and My Wife.
Hey there, and welcome back to Code 4's Couples. Today, I have a special guest, Zachary Saenz. He caught my eye when I was on LinkedIn, and I was scrolling through, and these amazing images came across my feed. They were so incredibly powerful, and if you are on your device, I will link some of these images and his LinkedIn profile. These images are so powerful of officers supporting each other, officers struggling, the shadows, the calls that live in your mind and take up residency, family with law enforcement. It was just incredibly powerful that I couldn't help but comment on them. And the more I read his posts, the more I thought, this guy has something to say. And so I reached out to him and asked if he wanted to be on the podcast. And he's like, heck yeah. So here he is, Sergeant Saenz. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today and sharing a little bit about you.
No, thank you, Cindy, for asking for me to be on here. Yeah, so a little bit about me real quick is I've been in law enforcement for 8 years. Patrol officer, field training officer, juvenile investigator, and now patrol sergeant, and also a member of the peer support team. So yeah, that's a little bit of my career.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was seeing on LinkedIn, that was like, hey, wait, because Texas has a relatively new peer network, like within the last couple of years. And I saw that it looked like you were a part of that and joining up with the peer network.
Yeah, so they give classes all over the state for anybody that has a TQL license, and you can be part of that peer network. It's called the Texas Law Enforcement Peer Network. And if you're a first responder that has a TQL license, you can download the app. It's called the Readiness app. And on the My TQL, it gives you the information that you need to log in. And it's all anonymous. Usually they'll try to match you up with somebody not in your region. So that way you can keep that, confidential communication, and nobody in your region is going to find out if you're, because that's one of the big things is confidentiality.
Of course. Yeah, good. That's an amazing system that I'm proud as a fellow Texan, that we now have, as opposed to where other states, like we've been behind on mental health. And so I'm really proud that network exists. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration for this art that you're doing.
So I've had my own mental health challenges, and, everything started back to when my dad first came back from Iraq. And that's how I got my foot into learning about mental health, PTSD and stuff like that. And then,
Because he was struggling with it when he came back?
Yeah.
Got it.
He was a total different person. He wasn't the same person that left. And so
that was hard.
Yeah, it was really hard. And just trying to learn what he had gone through and what he was dealing with. It was hard to understand that. In 2017, I got hired by my department and went to the academy, and then I started my police career. And throughout my career, I've experienced, traumatic incidents, critical incidents, seen many dead bodies, that's responded to many sexual assaults, not just the males or females, but children. And, it took a toll on my career. And so, yeah, and on my mental health.
I was like, it takes a toll on you, right?
Yeah. It sent me into this spiral toward recently, this past a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean.
You had said when we were talking back and forth, you had said that there was a little bit of a story of your fiance saying, I can't help you. Like, I see this, but I can't help. This is more than what I can do to help.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, what was that like to have her approach you? What did she say? And what was the conversation that y'all had?
Yeah. So in 2022, I was involved in a critical incident, and I was out on admin leave, and this happened in the later part of the year. during Halloween of that year, we were drinking, passing out candy. And after we finished passing out the candy, we were sitting down and we were ordering food. And I don't remember why we started arguing. And I just like snapped and I broke down. I started crying. I started yelling at her. And, eventually she told me, she was like, I can't help you. She's like, yes, I'm a nurse, but I cannot help you with this. You need to find professional help. This is beyond my capacity to help you. And that made me realize like, okay, my mental health not just affecting me, it's affecting her as well. And so my sister-in-law, who's one of the vice presidents at our behavioral centers here, behavioral hospitals, she recommended me trauma therapist, and I started seeing her, and it started to help my relationship little by little. I was starting to able to open up because before we've been together for almost 7 years. And
long time. So she's been with you almost your whole career.
Almost, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, she would tell me that in the earlier part of my career is like, hey, you're just a wall. Like you don't have any emotion. You don't have anything. Like she would feel stressed out and I would just be like, it's whatever. I deal with more stressful stuff at work. Like if I had no emotions.
Yeah.
And so it started taking a toll on my relationship or our relationship. And we had separated for a little bit back in 2020 during COVID and right before COVID. And, it made me realize like, okay, I know it's my mental health, but I'm not going to seek help. Like I knew I needed help, and it, just the stigma around trying to get the help really, really pushed me back from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So kind of telling yourself like, I don't need this. I can handle it on my own. And like you said, putting that wall up initially, it kind of like, I think of it like emotional armor, right? So like you put on physical armor every day, and then that emotional armor comes on, and then we forget to take it off.
Yeah.
And what she was communicating to you is, and it sounds like you even noticed it, that she would say like, or say something about her struggling, and you would be kind of flat and you'd be like, whatever, right? So it obviously it came to a head at one point, then y'all get back together, and then it came to a head again. And she was, I'm going to say brave enough to say like, hey, I care about you. You need to go get this, need to go talk to somebody, go unburden yourself from this. And that's okay that you're human. Yeah. So what was it like getting into counseling? I'm just curious. Were you like, oh, this stuff?
Well, at first, since I knew I needed it and I was seeking it, at first it was kind of like, I'm tiptoeing into it. But then my therapist, she was a lifesaver. She's a clinical social worker. And the first thing she told me, which helped me trust her, was, look, I don't know what you do. I don't know your job. I don't know how to do your job, but I know trauma and I can help you fix trauma. So that helped me jump into it and like, okay, she's willing to help me. She's not going to tell me, oh, I understand what you're going through. A lot of cops have that like, well, they don't know what I went through. Even the military, my dad told me that he would go to these counselors like, oh yeah, I understand. And they had never seen war or seen or done what he has done. So, it's the same thing as long as, a therapist tells them straight up, like, hey, I'm not going to judge you. I don't know how to, do your job. I don't know what you do, but we're going to help you process what you've been through. Yeah. So that really helped.
What did you notice? How did you notice the before? And I'm going to say like the before and the after. So when you think about your relationship with your fiance, is she still your fiance?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
We're getting married in November.
Well, congratulations. All right. All right. So when you think about the relationship before and after, what do you notice how you were before? And then afterwards, how have things changed?
So like I said before, I wouldn't talk about my emotions. I wouldn't talk about my day. I would just be like, oh, it was there. Walk in, how was your day? I was good. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. But now I'm more into my emotions when I speak to her. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself talking at her, not talking with her.
Wow.
But recently, I mean, we had a little argument and I started taking medication. Now it, it, instead of talking at her or just like getting defensive, I'm more open into just talking about what's going on. Not yelling. I'm more relaxed and able to, we're able to solve the problem instead of just throwing it away and then bringing it back up. And so, yeah, but now it's totally different. It's getting better every day.
So you went from not talking to maybe talking at her to now being with her.
Yeah.
That's quite a journey because I think talking at people, right? Where it's like we're just sharing it. I'm talking at, but then with like you're having a conversation and you're processing through.
Yeah.
So she's become a part of your team. Like she's now the part to do this together with her.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the mistakes that officers make when we're thinking about, like, I still think about those images that you have up there. And I think about a lot of times law enforcement officers want to say that, oh, I don't want to burden people with this.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that was a part of what it was before, but now that you're talking with her. And so now she's like, it's like, I'm not a burden. We're doing this life together.
Yeah.
And kind of changes it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then throughout counseling, I found that I needed boundaries, right? That we both needed boundaries.
Tell me about
Yeah.
that. What do you mean?
So when I would come home from work, since she's a night shift nurse and I was working day shift, I would get home and she's like, I need you to do this. As soon as I walk through the door, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. I need you to do this, that. And I'm like, I'm still in my uniform. I still have my belt on.
Like she's hammering you.
Yeah. And I'm just like,
Yes.
I would get frustrated and I would try to remember the things that she would tell me. She would go to work and then she'd come home and be like, you didn't do what I told you to do. And I'm like, okay. So through therapy, my therapist was like, hey, you need to set your boundaries, make sure that, hey, you know what? Some days are good and some days aren't. But whenever you get home, just let her know like, hey, I need at least 30 minutes. Let me get out of my uniform. Let me wind down a little bit. And then, we can have our conversation. You can tell me what you need to do. I even told her like, hey, if you need me to do something, write me a list because I will forget. And I mean, through trauma, we know that your short-term memory starts becoming a little jagged. So now every time we need to do something or she needs me to do something, she'll either text me a list or she'll write down a list and I'll write off check boxes. So yeah.
So those boundaries are kind of about, hey, I want to be there with you. However, I need to get my head in order, right? So having some kind like I shouldn't say verbalizing that is really important. Saying what you need, not just, and that it's okay to have needs. So saying what you need and verbalizing it and having your significant other receive that and working that out together. That makes sense. And I think that's so common a lot of times where officers need to unwind, but I think everybody needs to unwind a little bit. Nobody hits the door, right? No, I don't come home and hit the door and like start hammering my husband. It shifts a lot of times. So somebody might already be home and you're walking in the door and I've been waiting for you to come home so I can do something. And so you having those boundaries has definitely decreased arguments as well. So a couple different things that have happened since you've been on your own journey sounds like making sure you understand what you need, setting some boundaries, leaning on your fiance a little bit more, opening up, being honest about what you're struggling with. It sounds like there's been a big shift over the last couple years for you to understand. What's some of the message that you have for other law enforcement out there? Because your artwork definitely depicts that there's struggle, right? But then you have some images where there's ghosts in the background, which I'm like, whoa, right? That's really heavy. You can kind of see like, this is what's coming with me, or this is what's behind me or haunting me. And then you have these other images. There was one I was just looking at where an officer was sitting across from, I assume it's a spouse, maybe it's a therapist. It's a therapist. I'm going to steal that. Not really. We'll talk. But there's these other images that you have of family. There's
Mhm.
a really powerful image that you have of an officer sitting, it might be on a curb, but it's an officer sitting, and then like 12 other officers behind him with their hand on him. I'm like getting chills just talking about this.
Mhm.
And so you obviously have a message for our community about the struggle, about mental health. What do you want to convey?
I want to say that we are more than just the badge.
Mm,
As we go, the longer we stay in this career, we start to become ingrained in the culture where
mm,
I'm tough. I'm a, I'm a badge. I'm a bulletproof vest. I'm a gun. And then we forget who we really are outside of that badge and gun. Every time we go somewhere, people ask us, "Oh, what do you do?" or "Who are you?" And everybody knows. You can tell that we're
What's the
cops.
worst call you've been on?
Yes. So we end up becoming the badge, and we forget that we're human,
Mm,
just like everybody else. We come home, we take off that badge, we take off that gun, and it's like we stay in that mindset. We never come out of it, right? And if we start remembering that we're human, going back to remembering who we were before and who we are now, we we can really take care of not just our own families, but the community as a whole with whenever we take care of ourselves. Because I mean, everybody has heard the term hurt people hurt people. So
yes.
if we never take care of ourselves, how can we expect us to take care of the community? So another thing is mental health is officer safety.
Yes.
We forget, that we have to make decisions, split second decisions. We have to make choices. And if we're not in the right mindset, those choices that we can make can hurt us or hurt somebody else, hurt our partners. And so, yeah, I mean, we need to confront our demons
Mm,
and, we can't run away from the demons, but we can fight them. And because if we run away, they're just going to come right back, which is in some of the artwork, you could see all the darkness and the demons, the spirits around
yes.
the officers. And that's what that portrays, all the darkness that we just consume and we just let it sit in the back of our mind, thinking that we're going to forget
Mm,
about it until one day it just, you know, we collapse. I like to tell people about the duck on a shelf theory, where the shelf is your mind
mm,
and the ducks are all the traumatic incidents, emotional incidents, anything that you just start storing on the shelf or in your mind. And it just takes one duck to make that shelf fall. It could be in the middle of the shelf. It could be at the end of the shelf, or your shelf just becomes so full that you just, start spiraling faster and faster. So
yeah.
I use that a lot with when we do peer support, and a lot of officers seem to understand, like, oh wow, that's what I've been doing this whole time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Those are those are all so powerful, and the idea of the duck on the shelf, I've never heard that before, and
Mhm.
I like that because I was thinking of the shelf and I'm like, well, depending on how stable your shelf is, it could just be
Mhm.
one, right? Or
Yeah.
it could be like these are all placed just so, but that one could just tip it over too.
Yeah.
So, that is such a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's so poignant to say that these things haunt you, right? They live in the back of your mind.
Mhm.
And to think that as a human, right, you
Yeah.
brought it back around to your humanity. As a human, you're not wired, we're not wired
Yeah.
to see those things day in and day out. And the idea that, yes, we need to be able to keep ourselves healthy, that your mental wellness is just health, right?
Yep.
Mental health is just health. It's a wellness and it's a health issue. And how can you continue to serve the community that you want to serve in a healthy way if
Yeah.
you're not healthy yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, and we also forget that our mental health affects our physical health. If we're stressed out all the time and, our blood pressure starts going up, we start eating bad food, start getting heart problems. I mean, how many officers have heart attacks? And I've known of officers that have heart attacks without even having blockages. It's stress induced, myocardial infarctions. And it's just because we don't take care of ourselves. We just forget that our mental health affects us physically. And if we can do both together, we can have a better balance if we take care of this holistically instead of just physical or instead of just mental. We need to do it all together.
Perfect. If people want to check out your art, how can they best do that? Is LinkedIn the best place, or is there another place to check it out?
LinkedIn. I have no other social media, so LinkedIn for sure. That's where I post all my stuff.
Okay, so is it okay if I drop your LinkedIn into the show notes and y'all can follow him and go check out some of the artwork that he has done? It is very powerful. Please don't steal it if you want to use it as a part of a presentation or such. Sometimes I think like, oh, this is available. So if you would like to use his art for a presentation or media or social, please make sure that you reach out to him, because I'm telling you, you're going to see this art and you're going to be moved by it, because you can tell it comes from a very personal place for you. And to be able to see within somebody's mind who's struggling, but then also the community, the family, if you will, the blue family aspect, or brown, or whatever color we are, because I think of a sheriff's department, things like that. That's why. But, the community that we are, and the community and the support that can be given, which I think is the struggle, but then also, how you've taken that and turned it into support for others.
Yeah.
And I think in putting these images together, people are feeling seen, but also the images are like, hey, you can get help too. So that's why it's so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So any final words for everybody?
We're never alone. And whenever those demons come out, don't hesitate to ask for somebody. We're so good at calling for code 2s or code 3s when we need it. But when physically, right? But when we need a code 2 or code 3 because our mindset isn't right, we never do it. So don't hesitate to call for that code 2 or code 3 when you feel yourself spiraling down.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Zachary. I appreciate you taking my offer to come on the podcast. I know it was probably a little random, but I just, you are young and going to make a huge impact in our community. And thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing a little bit of you with everybody through your art. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cindy.
Guys, if you want to connect more with him, make sure to go to his LinkedIn profile. Or if you want to find out more about me, go to code4couples.com. I'll link in the podcast and the website down in the show notes. Don't forget that I do have a appreciation challenge that you can do with your significant other if you would like to, which is code4couples/appreciation. And you can grab that anytime you want. Until next time, everybody, y'all keep it code 4. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cindy, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.